So it's been known for quite some time that Fairygon is going to be a 24 episode series. However, it's recently come out that the TV listing has the episode stopped at episode 12, which is indicating that this could potentially be a split core, meaning that the other 12 episodes will most likely come out in the fall 2019 anime season. And if that is the direction they are going to go, I wouldn't be mad about that because this is an action-oriented show, and I'd rather them have the time to flesh out the production rather than pump out something that would be lackluster. Now, I know a majority of people don't like the visuals, especially the 3D, and I'm in the minority, but I really enjoy how this show functions and operates and just looks generally, so I really do hope that they do go split core because it would make sure that the production is pretty much on the top of its game for what they're aiming the show to look like and function like. Now, this week's episode, it's very similar to some of the other episodes in terms of like a chase sequence trying to get the Black Fairy Tome. However, I really enjoyed this week's episode just with the cast dynamic shifting it up quite a bit, having Clara be kind of in the forefront there, kind of siding with Marlia, but also just learning a lot about this unification war, and just, this did not go over well. Like, they're approaching like the 10-year anniversary mark, and you're seeing that when this was all said and done, the first little chunk of the flashback, we're seeing that we get the Prime Minister, people dropping their crown, and then you get like these 5 lords, each with their own section of land, and 3 out of 5 are already dead within 10 years of the war ending, because each of them, when you give them a decent sized chunk of land and power, they're going to think, hey, if this unification war just ended and this man could be the top dog, why can't I be the top dog? And I love that because this just feels so realistic for what a war to this nature would do. Basically, you have this grand war that ends and you get your new leader and he gives you a decent sized chunk of land and power and status, and then you get a little slice of the cake, but you want the entire cake. And to know that only 2 of the people are remaining and you know that they're gonna try the same thing, we're already starting to see what's going down. It's just really interesting because a unification war to this nature would not go over smoothly, especially with already 3 out of your 5 top dogs trying to kill you or betray you, and that is just so fascinating to me. I really liked learning about the flashback and like the little snippets we get of information of the past, and then transitioning to the present with just characters like Marlia learning the kind of ins and outs of what went down in the political atmosphere of this kind of kingdom. It's really fascinating to me. And it has to suck that knowing that everything that's gone down with Marlia and Free and just this kind of organization as a whole, knowing that the Black Fairy Tome of course wasn't going to be the first one they found, and knowing that they have to work so hard time and time again chasing down people, hoping that this time it will be the real deal, it's pretty just disappointing, you have to say. Like, imagine having to just chase down people for months or weeks or days to know that it is just another fake, and then while you were chasing a fake, the real one could be out there doing some pretty negative things. And that's what I like, is even though this episode functioned very similar to a couple episodes back when we were chasing down the Black Fairy Tome, I like how actually different it felt, because even though it was a similar chase sequence of trying to catch up with someone, get their briefcase in hopes that it is what you're looking for, it still felt rather distinct. And I think the key difference was that we shook up the cast dynamic. We were focusing on Clara rather than just kind of running down the streets with Free, but also it just felt like there was a lot more personality and story being told here, because for Clara, we learned that she lost her family in the war, and we learned that why she follows this organization, because the leader pretty much was a badass and saved her life. And the small conversation they had, it was actually pretty sad, a little bit heartwarming, but more sad than anything, because for Marlia, she never knew her mother and father, and then Clara's like, I guess I should feel fortunate because I at least knew them even if I lost him. And you can see how like hurtful that is to Marlia, but at the same time, she's not like mad that it was said. It's just such a complex line, because on one hand you think, man, I could see her smacking her because like she never knew her parents and this is kind of like a stab in the heart, but also you can understand that wasn't meant to be malicious or something to that nature. And even though for the most part there wasn't a lot of dialogue in the chase sequence, it was really interesting how well the music can bring out that atmosphere, because you're seeing that you have this like jazzy OST that usually plays, at least for the past couple of chase sequences, where when they're chasing down someone, there isn't a lot of dialogue. There is some, but for the most part, it is just trying to set the atmosphere and mood with this very almost like low upbeat track to just make it feel like this is an intense sequence, but it's not life or death. And what I appreciate about this track is you're really getting this sense of urgency without making it feel like someone's gonna get stabbed in the head. So if this does eventually happen, someone gets shot in the head during a chase sequence with music like this playing, it will come as a complete shock, and you won't see it coming. But I really liked it because it was just fun seeing a different shakeup with the cast and seeing that it wasn't even just Marlia's group trying to pursue this person. We're seeing all the factions with Bittersweet. We're seeing everyone trying. Every time there's a chase, it feels like everyone kind of picks up on the information and they're trying to get to who most likely has the Black Fairy Tome, but in the back of their minds all recognize that they probably don't have it. We're also seeing that they have some pretty interesting technology, and I really liked how the suits of armor were detailed, especially with the 3D, because I feel like anytime you have something that's not human and they're using their visuals to this way, it really makes it pop out and feel like it's different. And I love the technology because of how like high tech it is, while still almost keeping it grounded to like a medieval / Victorian setting, which I quite like. You're seeing the sound direction really pop with these like whistles, because they basically command these machines to fight for them with these whistles, but we can see that there's someone who's also has some sort of whistle that can kind of overtake them, and they're not understanding what's happening. For obvious reasons, you're just going to think it's a malfunction because he was probably at a far enough distance that only the machine would hear it. I thought it was interesting because the way they detailed the sound effects for this whistle, it sounded so unnatural, so weird, and just jarring that I really liked it. It wasn't something they really had to put too much thought into. It's just a whistle. They could have had someone blowing a whistle into a microphone and using that, but I liked how almost like machine-like it sounded. It really let it pop. And when the machines kind of went wild, it was nice seeing that. What I'm really digging about Faragon is that we're continuing to learn about this world, the Unification War. This episode had some of the most important information that we've ever learned about this show. And what I like is how, as you're learning about it, a lot of the times characters like Marlia, who didn't know too much about this war, is also learning. Of course, she has first-hand experience with it, but she didn't know the nitty-gritty with the politicals of who's who and who did what over the course of this. She just knows what happened to her village and people that she's loved. And I like that. I like learning about that and also transitioning to present day, so it feels like as we're learning, so is Marlia, and I appreciate that. It feels like it isn't as much of an exposition info dump, especially when a character is learning alongside us. While we're also getting a lot of personality with this crew, with Dorothea, and I like that. I like how it's not always trying to be super serious. The Black Fairy Tome, we have to get it. This is all that matters. We have to make sure we get this. That is all that's important. As we see some of these characters, especially who seems to have a thing for Clara, are kind of flirtatious. They really want to make sure that there is a more positive vibe, because even if you are working for a very powerful organization, not everyone's going to be straight and narrow to the book. Some people are going to have personalities that is more than just, I am a soldier doing my duty, and I appreciate that. The sound effects, especially seen by the whistle for the machines, is really interesting and unique and doesn't sound like a copy and paste from another anime, and the soundtrack continuously brings out the best atmosphere. I think, honestly, out of all of the pieces of music, and this isn't even like my favorite piece I'd go out to kind of listen to by itself, but I love what they do for the chase sequences, because it's not super like, oh my god, someone's gonna die, but rather this is just what you would expect to hear if you were listening to some sort of music to kind of enhance that chase sequence, because it's not a life or death sequence. And I like that. I mean, it just feels like this series, I can understand why so many people wouldn't like it because of the way they are exploring the backstory of the present day and just how many characters and faces you have to remember, but I appreciate learning it piece by piece, so by the time you wrap the show up, this will be one of those anime I know that after you complete it, after episode 24 is done, you go back episodes 1 through 24, binge it or watch it in a very short time period, you're gonna pick up on a lot more. Obviously, if you're not a fan of like piece by piece info dumping and then just kind of like wondering like what's truly the end goal, what's gonna happen once they get the Black Fairy Tome and where that's gonna go, that may not be your cup of tea, but for me, even though I wouldn't go out of my way to watch shows just like this, I like having a show like Faragon pop up every so often because it is such a different style of storytelling that you're not totally clear where it wants to go by the end, who truly will be the full antagonist, because everyone's doing things for their own gain, be it in the political kind of climate of upper chains of prime ministers and just people working for prime ministers, or organizations like Dorothea who may not also have all pure intentions with their hierarchy. Like, it's really interesting to me, and I like that. I mean, not everyone will, but I really like exploring such a large cast of characters, not totally understanding everyone's motivations, at least at the start. Sure, we're halfway through the first core, but this is a 24-episode series, and I'd be perfectly fine not knowing the true end goal even till episode 20, because there is such a wide variety that you can explore with this atmosphere, both on the political side, but also the personal character motivations. And the longer I watch Marlia, who I can agree maybe at the start of this anime didn't have too much of a personality past she just wants to see Veronica, I feel like she really is becoming someone with character and personality, and the more she interacts with different people that aren't just Free or Veronica, the more her character kind of shines and flourish, as too does the side cast. I think it would be easy to say that there's plenty of things you want to see fleshed out and explored more than we currently have. However, we are still so early in, we're only a fourth of the way through this story, and there's still so much time to fix what could be a mistake down the line, and I appreciate that. Sure, this may just be my opinion, not many will agree, That's how I'm feeling. I really like this episode. Honestly, it was one of the more enjoyable episodes for me. It wouldn't be my favorite out of the 6, but it felt like it had personality, it felt like it had character, and I really am excited to learn just what everyone truly wants to do with these tomes, because it seems like you get these tomes, especially the Black Fairy tome, who knows what you could do. The amount of things that are illegal in this country, that if you have suits of armor that could be connected to fairies, you're gonna get arrested. There clearly is a lot of corruption in this government, and it's clear why so many people would want to go against it, but also if you have just one slice of cake, you can say, well, that tasted rather good, but why can't I just have the entire cake and let's just overthrow the Prime Minister? It's so interesting, and I'm really excited to see which all these factions kind of endgame is, and that's going to be exciting going forward. But for everyone who did watch this week's episode of Fairygon, did you love it as much as myself? Did you have some issues? Because sure, some of the running sequences and just like the more basic animation, it is pretty jarring, but I think when they get into the overall action stuff where people are really kicking ass, especially seen by some of our badass characters like Clara, just shaking up a mob boss, I think it really does pop out very impressively with its visuals, but sure, there are production issues as well. So let me know if you loved it or hated it down in the comment section below, and if you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like, and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.